My name is MacNabb. This is Pandemic Passions here at 10C. It's a collection of abstract art that I've done across the pandemic. And what I love about abstract art is it's a great way to express emotion. And certainly the pandemic was an emotional event for, I'm sure, all of us. I should say that I didn't lose anyone close to me during the pandemic, but I am an ex-physician, and certainly my heart was wrenched during this time. And I naturally went to the canvas, where I have found since about 2015, when I first started painting, that I find I can really express my emotion as well as sometimes a small story. As I said, I'm a retired physician, and a lot of my brain life is thought, but a lot of my brain life is also strong emotion. And I find that in abstract art, I can bring the two together. Usually I start without a plan, sometimes a plan, but usually without a plan. And I just start making marks, and from my intuition or my gut, I respond to one mark with another mark, just kind of reflexively bypassing thought. But eventually thought kicks in. The pattern reminds me of something, and in these cases it's something to do with the pandemic. And I kind of go through that door to follow those thoughts and have some form of symbolic representation of both the emotion and, say, the event, or the personal event, or even as an avid news reader, events in local society, North America, and the world. Many of these paintings are large. I love large canvases. Great to just kind of dance with the paint. If anyone is interested, any adult interested in doing abstract art, I highly recommend it. It's great fun. As a retired physician, I was kind of trapped in my brain with thoughts, the right way of doing things, rules and regulations. And since 2015, through painting, I've kind of loosened up, just through experiential learning, just kind of purposely doing something against my brain, just kind of by the gut. I'm going to purposely make a mistake here. And I found it gave me a great deal more freedom in my thoughts, more freedom in my life, and I highly recommend it to all adults to just get a canvas and paint and play. But to talk about some specific paintings, I think I'll start with Deep Breath. Deep Breath came out of my thoughts about COVID-19 illness. As a physician, I have seen people struggling for breath, and that just breaks my heart. But I also knew that in terms of coping with this time we have, one of the coping mechanisms is taking deep breaths. Another painting I have is Protest, referring to the BLM protests in Canada and the States. It's got that energy and a little bit of anger. Another one is Storm Stayed. I used to practice medicine in rural Ontario, and we have a term there called storm stayed, which is essentially when you're held up or holed up by an intense winter storm. In that painting, the storm is the viral storm all around us, that sense of being caught indoors. But I couldn't help but put some light in the distance. And several of my paintings in the struggle for hope during the pandemic follow that same sort of theme, light in the darkness. This one here is Not Alone. It shows a tiny house on these barren mountains with a solitary moon. But there's a sense that the moon and the stars and the atmosphere around you is kind of looking after you. And I found that very helpful, that sense of something looking down at me. I live alone, and prior to the pandemic, I went through a 2-year illness where I was essentially very isolated on the couch for hours at a time. It was a thyroiditis. And that sense of isolation and loneliness only continued in the pandemic. Just as I started to get better physically, the pandemic hit. And so a lot of my paintings deal with that sense of isolation, loneliness, but endurance, perseverance, hope at the end of the tunnel, and hanging in there. The last painting, Vax. You've heard of anti-vax. I'm a physician. This painting did have a plan. It was an idea that popped in my head, a schematic, to celebrate the happiness, the joy, the potential hope in mass vaccination. The vertical lines are essentially the figure of neck, shoulder, arm of a crowd of people, and the horizontal lines are indicating the actual needle. It was a fun one, but took me a lot of concentration and meticulousness, which sometimes brings out from me that doctor perfectionism, and I don't enjoy it as much. The first painting, the painting in the window, is called Shatter. I did this in January 2020. I was watching the news, heard about this severe respiratory mysterious illness in China and then in Korea, and with my past medicine behind me, I knew we were in for something bad. I didn't know how bad. They never covered that sort of stuff in medical school. But it is a dark piece, it's a dramatic piece, the kind of radical changes in historical timelines, lives and plans that pandemics can do. But it does end at this hopeful point. And there are 15 paintings here, chronologically arranged, and I hope that in viewing them, you can, first of all, catch the emotion that's behind the painting, and then have your own memories of similar emotions going on during the pandemic. I have many people to thank. The Guelph Arts Council has been super with me over the pandemic. I've been involved in several other programs, and I've had 2 solid mentors, friends, but have loved my art from the beginning, and I think all artists need that. So love your artists, support the arts, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah, that was great.